everything I learned about sex, I learned in the church. Now, come on,
okay. Let's talk about that.
Every single thing. And some things I learned by them not talking about it, and things I learned right in the room. Hello, somebody, you know? And so I think that the church, the Black church, the church, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, all the religions, Judaism needs to have a revolution around sexuality where people actually having a comprehensive conversation about sexuality in general. Because we're asking people to understand homosexuality and they can't even understand heterosexuality. How can you understand what's going on with the Black queers in the corner and you don't even know what the hell's going on with you?
You don't know what you got going on.
You don't even know it. You have no concept around science or biology or basic 101. And so I think sometimes we're trying to have that conversation with Big Mama. We forget she didn't even have the conversation herself about her. Exactly. She has fallacies and mistruths about her own sexuality that she has to probably unpack and decolonize before she can even get to what's going on with Billy Bob.
Well, I don't know, because I done seen Big Mama get in touch with her sexuality when she watching one of them old Denzel Washington movies. So I don't know.
Yeah, she knows something.
See, Bishop, now you on here preaching, you're gonna make me send my $4 in.
Send it in.
You're gonna
send them tithes.
There are a lot of Black queer folks who don't want to leave the traditional church.
Yeah.
So how do we have that conversation? How do we reach out? Or
I think it's complicated. And I think those of us who are walking in our freedom and in our truth need to always be conscious of the fact that it's a journey. Oppression is real. Like, oppression oftentimes is the very thing that is in our DNA. It's how we move, how we breathe. It's like I tell people, black folk, my name is O.C. Allen, Oliver. That's not even really my name, right? I'm African, right? Dude, just work with me on this. My name is somebody else's name.
Mm-hmm.
The shirt I am wearing, for all intents and purposes, is somebody else's shirt. I speak somebody else's language. Oppression and history and systems are so pervasive and so real that it takes an enormous amount of work to pull out of it. And oftentimes for us who grew up in the Black church is our identity. So I'm going to argue from 2 points. So the first one is when you and I are asking people to come to terms around their freedom, you're talking about tradition. You're talking about how people name themselves. You're talking about their food. You're talking about, their family. You're talking about all these structures that are really complicated and difficult. And we have to first, on our side of the street, have a certain degree of compassion. I say that with having had to do a lot of work to be able to say that. On the other side is, before we ask people to accept us, we got to accept ourselves. Mm-hmm. As Black queer men. We got to accept that. We got to not only accept and embrace it, but to love it. Like, our sexuality is to be loved. Our queerness is to be loved, but we must first love it. We have a lot of shame. A lot of the shame does come from religion, but a lot of the shame comes from society, which is oftentimes influenced by religion. I think, part of it is to work through the shame. The second part is to be very courageous and bold about how we show up in spaces without any regrets. And then I think the third thing is to create our own spaces. I think sometimes we have this fantasy with changing what the bishop thinks or changing what the board of bishops or the pastors or the evangelists think. Having to help people work through how they view the Bible. And the truth is that just may not happen. Can we be fully who we are and people still think the way they think? But at the same time, reimagine what the Black church looks like. The Black church looks like a lot of things. It is not one thing. We may come from an oppressive part of it, but it can be any number of things. And so I think we have to have the conversations with ourselves. I think it's okay to have conversations with people, but not have conversations with people in a way where we manage whether they change or not. And you have the conversation also by how you show up. When I stand up behind that pulpit, that is gay pride all year.
Oh, I've been down there before. I didn't see y'all.
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is I show up as me.
Right.
I show up fully, authentically, in my full truth. To me, that is a conversation. I am a walking you are a walking conversation. You have walked into spaces and you didn't need to try to convince anybody of anything, but just by the fact that you showed up and you showed up authentically, you are a walking conversation. You are that we use the word influencer a lot. And sometimes I think we don't use that right, but by you showing up, you have influenced the room.
For little queer children who are in the church now, still struggling with their sexuality and being told that what you got going on is not of God, it does not deserve love, what type of advice would you give to them?
Well, first of all, no one should struggle with their sexuality. That's a whole class in terms of don't struggle with it. I think that the thing that I think is important to know is that you are God. You can't be created in the image of the thing and not be that thing. And not just the image of it, but the likeness. Not just the image, but I'm created in the likeness of God. So that means that I have the same properties as God, which includes my sexuality. Well, are you trying to say that God has a sexuality? No, I might be saying something even further than that. I might be saying that there is a deep spiritual energy that is connected to the sexual expression, the identity, the personality, and all that comes with us. That comes from the divine, that is actually divine. It is spiritual. And so young queer kid, I would tell my 13-year-old myself when I was 13, that, what God gave you is good. It is beautiful. You are perfect the way you are. You don't need to change. Other people can have their perspectives, but that doesn't mean it's a God perspective. And if I'm trying to find out what does God think, I can listen to myself. It's always interesting when you talk to us and you ask us, in the middle of all that shame and that bashing and all the things people said and all this stuff you heard and your family and your mama and your daddy and all that, did you still feel something deep within that felt like God? And everybody says yes. Even when you might have had your concept of God wrong, that God was angry at you, you still deep down, if you think about it, you felt that there was something in you that wouldn't let go.
Wow.
That's God. That's God. And I would say, listen to that. Pay attention to that. It's the outside voices that will distract us from the inside voice.